The fluorescent lights in the ICU hummed with a steady, mechanical buzz that made David's headache. Or maybe that was just exhaustion. He couldn't remember the last time he'd slept, eaten, or even stood up from this vinyl chair beside Jace's bed. The clock on the wall read 2:17 a.m. Jace looked so small under the white hospital sheets. Tubes ran from his thin arms to bags of clear fluid hanging from metal poles. Monitors beeped in rhythm with his heartbeat, steady. Now, thank God, but the bruising on his face told a different story. Purple and yellow patches spread across his left cheek and temple. His right arm was in a cast from elbow to wrist. David reached out and touched his son's hand. The skin felt warm, alive. That was something. 36 hours ago, when the ambulance had brought Jace in, the doctors weren't sure if he'd make it through the night. Severe concussion, fractured ulna, possible internal bleeding, all from falling down the stairs. That's what Helen had told the paramedics. That's what she'd said when she called him at the auto shop, her voice high and panicked. He fell, David. He just fell. I don't know how it happened, but David knew his wife, knew the way she twisted truth like wire until it bent to whatever shape she needed. 10 years of marriage had taught him that much. His phone vibrated on the armrest. Helen's name flashed across the screen. David stared at it, 3 rings before answering. What? Tomorrow's mom's birthday. Her voice was flat, matter of fact, not the voice of a mother whose child was fighting for stability in a hospital bed. I need help getting the place ready. David closed his eyes. Helen, he's in the ICU. And? My mother's expecting a party. The caterers are coming at noon, and I can't set up by myself. You know how she gets when things aren't perfect. Our son is hooked up to machines. David's voice came out barely above a whisper. He was trying not to break, trying not to scream into the phone where the night nurse might hear. He almost died. Don't be dramatic. The doctor said he's stable now. He has a fractured skull, Helen. Then maybe you should have been there to stop it. Her tone sharpened like a blade. If you weren't always at that stupid shop, working late, maybe our family wouldn't be falling apart. David felt something crack inside his chest. He's our son, and my mother only turned 60 once. I'm not canceling her party because you want to sit. They're feeling sorry for yourself. Are you coming or not? I can't believe you're saying this. Then you're cut off, David. I mean it this time. No more joint account. No more credit cards. You want to act like you're the only one who cares about Jace. Fine. Do it on your own dime. The line went dead. David sat there with the phone pressed to his ear, listening to silence. His hand was shaking. He looked at Jace, still unconscious, still bandaged, and felt a rage so pure it scared him. He pulled up Helen's contact and blocked her number. That kind of cold doesn't come out of nowhere. David looked up. Dr. Karen Holt stood in the doorway, her arms crossed over her white coat. She was maybe mid-40s, with gray streaking through her dark hair and tired eyes that had probably seen too much in her years as a pediatric neurologist. Sorry, David said. Didn't mean for you to hear that. I've been doing this job for 20 years. Dr. Holt stepped into the room, her voice low. I know what normal parent behavior looks like, and I know what it looks like when something's wrong. David wanted to defend Helen, wanted to say she was just stressed, just scared, just dealing with things in her own way. But the words wouldn't come. They'd be lies anyway. She's his mother, he said instead. That doesn't mean she's acting like one. Dr. Holt glanced at the monitors, checking Jace's vitals with a practiced eye. His injuries, they're consistent with a fall. But the pattern bothers me. Kids who tumble downstairs usually have more distributed trauma. Jace is specific. Impact points that suggest force. David's stomach turned. What are you saying? I'm saying I filed a report with Child Services. Standard procedure for cases like this. She met his eyes directly. And I'm saying that if something else happened, if there's something, you need to tell me. Now would be the time. I don't know what happened. I was at work. Helen was home with him. Dr. Holt nodded slowly. Keep an eye on him. He should wake up soon. She left, her footsteps fading down the corridor. David sat back in the chair and stared at his son. The fluorescent lights buzzed on. Outside the window, The parking lot was empty except for a few scattered cars under yellow street lamps. The world felt very far away. He must have dozed off, because when he opened his eyes again, the room was brighter. Dawn. Light filtered through the blinds. And Jace was awake. Jace! David lurched forward, nearly knocking over the four-pole. Jace, can you hear me? His son's eyes blinked slowly, unfocused. His lips moved, but no sound came out first. Then, barely audible, Dad. I'm here, buddy. I'm right here. David pressed the call button for the nurse, then took Jace's hand again. How do you feel? Head hurts. I know. The doctors are going to help with that. You're going to be okay. Jace's eyes focused on him. They were brown like David's, and right now they were filled with something that looked like fear. Dad! His voice cracked. Mommy pushed me. The words hit like a fist to the gut. David's breath stopped. What? She said. Jace's bottom lip trembled. Tears started rolling down his cheeks, mixing with the bandages. She said you didn't love her anymore. She was yelling, and I told her to stop, and she pushed me at the top of the stairs. I tried to grab the railing, but I couldn't, and stop. David's voice came out hoarse. It's okay. You don't have to say more. She told me not to tell. Jace was crying openly now. She said if I told, you'd leave, and it will be my fault. She said nobody would believe me. But Dad, she pushed me. She really pushed me. David felt like the room was tilting. 10 years. 10 years of Helen's manipulations, her lies, her cruel little comments that he'd brushed off as stress or hormones, or just her personality. 10 years of making excuses while she chipped away at him piece by piece. And now this. Now she'd hurt their son. He pulled Jace into a careful hug, mindful of the tubes and wires. I believe you, Hugh whispered into his son's hair. I believe every word. Dr. Holt rushed in, followed by 2 nurses. They checked Jace's vitals, asked him questions, shined lights in his eyes. David stepped back and watched, his mind racing. Helen had pushed Jace down the stairs. Helen had hurt their son. Helen was going to pay. The birthday party was in full swing when David pulled up to Helen's mother's house. Virginia Hurst lived in one of the nicer neighborhoods, the kind where every lawn looked like it had been trimmed with scissors and every driveway held a car that cost more than David made an ire. The Hurst house was a sprawling 2-story colonial with white columns and a circular drive. Cars packed the street. Through the front windows, David could see people milling around with wine glasses and appetizer plates. Classical music drifted from the open door. He didn't bother knocking. The entryway opened into a large living room filled with guests. Women in dresses and pearls, men in blazers. Everyone holding drinks and laughing at jokes that probably weren't that funny. The kind of people Virginia surrounded herself with. Rich, shallow, more concerned with appearances than anything real. David walked in wearing his work jeans and a flannel shirt that still had a grease stain on the sleeve. Every conversation stopped. Heads turned. Helen stood near the fireplace in a bright red dress that probably cost more than his truck payment. Her blonde hair was styled in perfect waves. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like she hadn't spent the last 2 days worrying about her son at all. Her eyes went wide when she saw him. David, you can't just... He woke up. The words cut through the room like a knife. Helen's face went pale beneath her foundation. What? Jace. David's voice was calm, steady, but there was steel underneath. Our son, the one in the hospital. He woke up this morning. Virginia Hurst materialized from the crowd. Her thin frame wrapped in a silver gown that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She had the same sharp features as Helen, the same ice-cold eyes that could freeze water. This is inappropriate, Virginia said, her voice dripping with disdain. This is a private party. You weren't invited. He told me what happened. David continued, ignoring Virginia completely. His eyes stayed locked on Helen. Jace told me exactly how he fell. Helen's hand went to her throat. He's confused. The doctor said head trauma can cause. He said you pushed him. The room went silent. Even the classical music seemed to fade. 20 pairs of eyes swung between David and Helen like spectators at a tennis match. That's ridiculous, Helen said, but her voice wavered. He fell. I wasn't even near the stairs when it happened. He said you were yelling at him. Said you told him it was because I don't love you anymore. David took a step closer. He said you pushed him and then told him not to tell anyone. Told him nobody would believe him. You're upset, Virginia interjected, stepping between them. Her expression was cold, dismissive. You're distraught, and you're looking for someone to blame. Whatever nonsense your boy said, he's confused from the injury. These accusations are outrageous. Are they? David looked around at the guests, all watching with various expressions of shock and discomfort. My son has a fractured skull, a broken arm, bruises all over his body, and his mother's here throwing a party like nothing happened. How dare you? Virginia hissed. You come into my home and make these vile accusations against my daughter? Get out before I call the police. Call them. David's jaw was tight. Maybe they'll want to know why Helen hasn't been to see Jace once since he was admitted. Maybe they'll want to know why she was more worried about this party than whether her son was going to survive the night. Helen's perfect composure cracked. You don't understand anything. You never understood. It had responsibilities. I had obligations to my family. He is your family. The shout tore out of David's throat before he could stop it. Jace is your family, and you hurt him. That's enough. Virginia's voice could have cut glass. You're clearly mentally unstable. Helen told me you've been acting paranoid lately, making wild accusations, trying to control her. This little performance only proves you need help. David looked at Helen. She wouldn't meet his eyes. She was already building the narrative, already spinning the story to make herself the victim. He could see it happening in real time. You'll pay for what you've done, he said quietly. That's a threat, Helen said, her voice gaining strength now that her mother was beside her. Everyone here heard that. He just threatened me. No, David shook his head. That's a promise. He turned and walked out. Behind him, the whispers started immediately. He could hear Virginia's voice rising, telling everyone that David was having a breakdown, that they should disregard everything he'd said, that poor Helen had been dealing with so much it didn't matter. Let them talk. Let them whisper. The truth had a way of coming out eventually, and when it did, Helen would get exactly what she deserved. The next 3 weeks were the hardest of David's life. Helen moved fast. Within 2 days of the birthday party, she'd filed for separation and a restraining order, claiming David had made violent threats against her in front of witnesses. She'd hired an expensive lawyer, paid for by Virginia, no doubt, and was fighting for full custody of Jace. The worst part was how easily people believed her. Helen had always been good at playing the victim. She had that way of tilting her head and letting her eyes get watery, of speaking in a soft, wounded voice that made people want to protect her. And she had her mother's money and connections backing her up. Suddenly, David was the bad guy. Neighbors who used to wave when he mowed the lawn now crossed the street when they saw him coming. Parent from Jace's school gave him suspicious looks when he picked his son up for his court-approved visitation. Even some of his cousins started asking if maybe he should see a therapist, if maybe he was taking the stress of the separation too hard. The narrative Helen was spreading was simple. David was mentally unstable. He was jealous and controlling. When Jace got hurt in an accident, David had snapped and started making wild accusations because he couldn't handle the guilt of not being there. He was trying to hobble Helen for his own inadequacy as a father. He was poison, and it was working. David sat in his sister Shannon's kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. He hadn't slept more than a few hours in days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Jace's face in that hospital bed, heard his son's small voice saying, "Mommy pushed me." Shannon set a plate of eggs in front of him. "You need to eat. Not hungry. I don't care. Eat." David picked up a fork, but just pushed the eggs around. Shannon sat down across from him, her practical, no-nonsense face creased with worry. She was 4 years younger than him, but had always seemed older somehow, more grounded. She'd moved to Tennessee from Kentucky 2 years ago, and right now, she was the only family member who wasn't treating him like he'd lost his mind. "Marcus called again," Shannon said. "He wanted to know if the rumors about you threatening Helen were true." Marcus was their cousin. David had grown up with him, had been best man at his wedding. "What did you tell him?" "I told him to call you himself if he wanted to know, and that he was an idiot for believing anything that came out of Helen's mouth." Shannon took a sip of her own coffee. "He didn't call, I notice." Nobody wants to believe that someone like Helen would hurt a kid. She's too pretty, too sweet, too put together. David set down his fork. And I'm just the mechanic who married above his station. Of course I'd make up lies to drag her down. You're not making anything up. I know that. You know that. But nobody else does. David rubbed his face. Even the social worker they assigned seemed skeptical. She kept asking Jace if maybe he was confused, if maybe he fell and then dreamed that Helen pushed him because of the head injury. What did Jace say? He started crying. Said he knew what happened. Said it was real. David's hands clenched into fists. And then Helen's lawyer used that in court. Said Jace was being coached, that I was manipulating him because I was angry about the separation. Shannon reached across the table and grabbed his wrist. Listen to me. You don't need to purveyor sane, David. You just need to be smart. Truth always comes out. It just takes time. What if we don't have time? What if the judge decides I'm unfit and gives Helen full custody? What if Jace has to go live with her? That won't happen. You don't know that. No, Shannon admitted. But I know you. You're not going to give up. You're going to document everything. You're going to be calm and rational and show everyone that you're the estable parent here. And eventually, Helen's going to slip. People like her always do. David wanted to believe her. But belief was hard when the whole world seemed determined to paint him as the villain, that he spent every minute he wasn't working or with Jace building his case. He kept copies of every text message Helen sent, every voicemail she left. He got copies of Jace's medical records from the hospital. He documented every time Helen was late to pick Jace up for her visitation, every time she canceled plans with him, every inconsistency in her story about the accident, the doctor. Holt had become an unexpected ally. She testified to child services that the injury pattern was suspicious, that Helen's behavior at the hospital had been unusual. It wasn't enough to charge Helen with anything. Not yet, but it was something. Jace was seeing a therapist twice a week now, a kind woman named Ms. Patricia who specialized in trauma. She was careful, patient, never pushing Jace to say more than he wanted to. But slowly, session by session, Jace was opening up about what life with Helen had really been like, the yelling when things weren't perfect, the way she'd blamed Jace when Virginia criticized her parenting, the time she'd grabbed his arm hard enough to leave bruises, then cover them with long sleeves, the constant message that he was a burden, that he was the reason she was unhappy, that if he just behaved better everything would be fine. It made David sick. How had he not seen it? How had he let this go on under his own roof? But he couldn't focus on guilt now. He had to focus on getting Jace safe. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday in late October. Helen had court-order visitation with Jace every other weekend. David had to drop him off at Helen's new apartment, a small place in a complex near her mother's house, and pick him up 2 days later. Every time he left Jace there, it felt like leaving part of himself behind. This particular weekend, Helen had texted saying she'd be out of town Sunday afternoon and would bring Jace back to David's place early. But Sunday came and went with no word. David tried calling. No answer. He tried texting. Nothing. By 8 p.m., David was ready to call the police. Then his phone rang. Mr. Maddox, an unfamiliar woman's voice. This is Diane Torres. I live in the apartment next to your ex-wife. Is Jace okay? He's fine. He's here with me. But I thought you should know. There was an incident. David was already grabbing his keys. What happened? Ms. Maddox came back around 6. Your son didn't want to stay overnight with her. I could hear him through the wall saying he wanted to go home. She started yelling. Really yelling, saying awful things. David's blood ran cold. What kind of things? She said. Diane's voice dropped. She said he made you hate her. That it was his fault you left. That he owed her. I know I shouldn't have been listening, but it was so loud. And the boy was crying. I recorded something on my phone. I thought maybe you'd want it. For the court case. I'm on my way. Diane Torres was a woman in her 50s with graying hair and kind eyes. She let David into her apartment, where Jace sat on the couch, red-eyed and shaking. David gathered his son into a hug and held on tight. You want to hear it? Diane asked quietly, holding up her phone. David nodded. She hit play. Helen's voice filled the small living room, distorted slightly by the wall, but perfectly clear. You made Daddy hate me. Do you hear me? Everything was fine until you started talking. You owe me. You owe me for ruining my life. Jace's voice small and scared. I want my dad. Your dad is a loser who works with his hands for minimum wage. You think he's going to take care of you? He can barely take care of himself. He loves me. He loves playing the victim. And you fell right into it, didn't you? Making up stories, lying to doctors, turning everyone against me. Well, congratulations. You destroyed our family. More crying. A thump like something hitting a wall. Then Jace's voice again. You're hurting. I should have never had you. My mother was right. I should have stayed in school and focused on my career. But no, I had to play house with a mechanic and pop out a kid who does nothing but make me miserable. Diane, stop the recording. I called you because there's more. She left after that. Said she was going to her mother's. Your boy knocked on my door and asked if he could wait with me. David looked at Jace. Did she hurt you? Jace shook his head. She grabbed my arm. But it doesn't hurt. I'm okay, Dad. He wasn't okay. David could see it in his eyes. But he was safe now. That was what mattered. Can you send me that recording? David asked Diane. Already did. Send it to the email you gave me when you called. Diane sat down on the chair across from them. I've got a grandson about his age. If someone talked to him like that, it went to know what she said. That's not how a mother should talk to her child. Thank you. David's voice was rough. Seriously, thank you. The recording spread fast that by the end of the week. Half the parents at Jace's school had heard it. Someone had shared it in a neighborhood social media group. The school counselor called David to say she was filing a formal report with Child Protective Services that Helen's perfect image cracked like glass. Suddenly, people started remembering things. How Helen always seemed more concerned with how Jace looked than how he felt. How she'd complain loudly at school events about how hard parenting was, how much she'd sacrificed. How she'd blame Jace in front of other parents when he acted like a normal kid. Things that had seemed like typical stressed parent behavior now looked different in the light off that recording. Virginia tried to do damage control. She made phone calls, threw around her family name, implied that Diane Torres had been paid off by David to create a fake recording. But the technology experts Helen's own lawyer hired confirmed the audio was genuine. No editing, no manipulation. Just Helen's voice, saying what she really thought. 2 weeks later, Helen called David. Her number wasn't blocked anymore. His lawyer had advised against it for documentation purposes. We need to talk, she said. Her voice sounded different. Tired. Maybe scared. Talk to my lawyer. David, please. This is getting out of hand. Is it? He kept his voice neutral. Shannon had taught him that. Don't give Helen anything touse. Don't lose your temper. Just state facts. Because from where I'm sitting, it's finally getting somewhere. People are saying terrible things about me. Are they lying? Silence. Helen, you pushed our son down a flight of stairs. You verbally abused him. And when you got caught, you tried to destroy me to cover it up. What did you think was going to happen? I didn't mean. Her voice broke. It was an accident. I was stressed and angry, and you just pushed a 9-year-old down the stairs. Yeah, I got that part. You're going to ruin me. No, David said coldly. You ruined yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows it. Helen started crying. Big, gasping sobs that once upon a time might have made David feel guilty. Now they just made him tired. Please, she begged. Can't we work this out? For Jace's sake? Don't you want him to have both parents? I want him to have parents who won't hurt him. I made a mistake. You made a choice. And now you get to live with it. He hung up. That night, David got a call from Virginia's number. He almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of him. Mr. Maddox. Virginia's voice was arctic. I think it's time we discuss this situation like adults. I'm listening. My daughter made an error in judgment. A serious one, I'll admit. But she's been under enormous stress, dealing with a failing marriage and the pressures of motherhood. Surely we can come to some arrangement. What kind of arrangement? Helen will agree to supervised visitation. She'll attend therapy. And in return, you drop this crusade to destroy her reputation. We all move forward as a family. David laughed. He couldn't help it. You think I'm trying to destroy her reputation? Virginia, I'm just telling people what she did. If that destroys her reputation, maybe the reputation wasn't worth much to start with. Don't be naive. You want your son to grow up knowing his father dragged his mother through mud. I want my son to grow up safe. Everything else is just noise. You're making a mistake, Virginia said, her voice dropping into a threat. My family has resources you can't imagine. Lawyers. Connections. We can make your life very difficult. You already have, David said. And I'm still here. Still fighting. Still protecting my son. So unless you've got something else to say, I'm done with this conversation. He hung up before she could respond. Shannon hugged him when he told her about the call. You did good. Doesn't feel good. It will. Eventually. She pulled back and looked at him. She's scared, Dev. They both are. When people like them get scared, they get desperate. Be careful. Devin nodded. But he wasn't worried about careful anymore. He was worried about winning. The recording spread through the school like wildfire. Within days, everyone knew what Helen had said to Jace. And with that knowledge came judgment. Virginia found out when one of her bridge club members forwarded her the audio file with a message. Is this your daughter? The phone call came that evening. David knew because Jace was with him, and Helen's phone was still linked to their old family plan. He could see her mother's name flash across the call log over and over. 15 calls in 30 minutes. The next day, Shannon called him. You need to hear this. She'd been at the grocery store in Virginia's neighborhood, the expensive one with the organic section and imported cheeses, when she'd heard Ray's voices from the parking lot. Virginia's voice. Helen's voice. Shannon had stayed in her car and recorded it on her phone. David listened to the audio in his truck during lunch break. Virginia's voice came through cold and sharp as broken glass. You embarrassed me. Helen, do you understand what you've done? My friends are asking me if it's true. If my daughter really said those things to her own child. Mom, I was upset. I didn't mean. I don't care what you meant. Fix this. Fix it now before this destroys our family's reputation completely. Our reputation. Helen's voice rose, cracking with emotion. What about me? What about what I'm going through? You don't care about me. You care about your stupid reputation. There was a pause. Then Virginia's voice came back, colder than before. Everything you touch turns to poison, Helen. Your marriage. Your son, and now my good name. I've spent 40 years building respect in this community, and you're tearing it down in weeks. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? I gave you everything. The best schools, the best opportunities, and you threw it away to marry a mechanic and have a baby you clearly never wanted. And now you can't even pretend to be a decent mother. The recording ended there. Shannon must have driven away. David sat in his truck, staring at his half-eaten sandwich. Virginia had finally said what everyone in that family had always thought. Helen was a disappointment. A failure. And now even her mother was done protecting her. 2 days later, Helen showed up at the auto shop. The IT was late afternoon. Most of the guys had gone home. David was finishing up an oil change when he heard footsteps in the bay. He looked up to see Helen standing there, and she looked desperate. Her hair wasn't styled. Her makeup was smudged like she'd been crying. She wore jeans and a plain sweater instead of her usual designer clothes. We need to talk, she said. David wiped his hands on a rag. Talk to my lawyer. Please. Just 5 minutes. No lawyers. No judges. Just us. Something in her voice made him pause. Or maybe it was just curiosity. He pulled out his phone and opened the voice recorder app, then slipped it back into his pocket with the record button on. If she was going to say something, he wanted proof. Fine. 5 minutes. Helen stepped closer, her arms wrapped around herself. This is getting out of control, David. The recording, the gossip, my mother. I need you to help me. Help you. Tell people it's not as bad as it sounds. Tell them I'm a good mother who just had a bad moment. Tell them you forgive me. David stared at her. Why would I do that? Because you can't destroy me, David. Her voice gained an edge. You need me. Jace needs his mother. You can't raise him alone on a mechanic salary. You need me. The words hung in the air between them. Helen actually believed it. She actually thought she held power here. David felt something settle in his chest. Certainty. Clarity. I needed a wife, he said quietly. I got a liar. Helen's face went red. Don't you dare. I needed a partner. Someone who would help me raise our son. Instead, I got someone who pushed him down the stairs and then tried to convince everyone I was crazy for believing him. It was an accident. You just told that neighbor that Jace ruined your life. That you should never have had him. Those aren't the words of someone who had an accident. Those are the words of someone who's been resenting their child for years. Helen's hands clenched into fists. You're twisting everything. You always do this. You make him sound like a monster when I'm just trying to survive in a life I never wanted. Then you should have left. Filed for divorce. Walked away. But you didn't. You stayed and you took your misery out on a 9-year-old boy who never did anything except exist. He turned you against me. No, Helen. You did that all by yourself. David's voice stayed calm, controlled. Every word measured. And now everyone sees what I've been seeing for years. The real you. The one who cares more about appearances than people. The one who hurts people and then plays the victim when there are consequences. Helen's eyes were wild now. You can't do this to me. I'll lose everything. My mother, my friends, my son. You already lost all of that. You lost it the second you put your hands on Jace and pushed. Helen opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she seemed to realize she'd walked into a trap. Are you recording this? David didn't answer. Helen backed away, her face pale. You bastard. You manipulative bastard. I learned from the best. She turned and ran. Literally ran out of the bay and to her car. David watched her peel out of the parking lot, tires squealing, that he pulled out his phone and stopped the recording. 12 minutes. She talked for 12 minutes, and every word was documented. He saved it to 3 different cloud accounts and sent copies to Rita and Shannon. Helen was cracking, and he was going to make sure everyone heard it when she finally broke. The final crack in Helen's facade came a month later. The judge had ordered a psychological evaluation for both parents as part of the custody hearing. David went to his appointments, answered the questions honestly, let the evaluator dig through his life. He had nothing to hide that Helen's evaluation was different. According to the report David's lawyer showed him, Helen had been defensive, hostile, and deflected every question about her parenting. She'd insisted repeatedly that Jace was lying, that David had coached him, that she was the victim of a conspiracy. When the evaluator asked about the recording, Helen claimed it was taken out of context, that she'd only said those things because she was tired and Jace had been misbehaving. The evaluator's conclusion was clear. Helen demonstrated narcissistic tendencies, an inability to accept responsibility for her actions, and a concerning lack of empathy toward her child. She recommended supervised visitation only, with mandatory therapy before any custody expansion could be considered 0.2 days after the report came out. Helen showed up at David's work. The auto shop where David worked was small, family-owned, tucked into a corner of the industrial district. He was under the hood of a Ford pickup when his boss, Miguel, tapped him in the shoulder. Someone here to see you. David straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag. Helen stood by the open bay door, and she looked nothing like the polished woman from Virginia's party. Her hair was pulled back in amity knot. She wore jeans and a sweatshirt. No makeup. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Can we talk? She asked. Miguel glanced between them, then disappeared into the office. David set down the rag. You shouldn't be here. I know. Helen wrapped her arms around herself. I needed to see you, to talk to you without lawyers and judges and everyone else listening. What do you want, Helen? I want to explain. There's nothing to explain. Yes, there is. Her voice rose. You don't understand what it was like. Living with my mother's expectations. Trying to be perfect all the time. And then you, always working, always tired, never helping with anything. So you pushed our son down the stairs, David interrupted. That's your explanation? You were stressed. Helen's face crumpled. It wasn't like that. I didn't plan it. I was angry and he was being difficult and I pushed him. I didn't think. I didn't mean for him to fall. But you let me think it was an accident. You let me believe you. And then when he told the truth, you tried to make everyone think I was crazy. I was scared. Tears streamed down her face. I was scared of losing everything. My mother, my life, my son. You should have been scared of hurting him in the first place. I know. God, David, I know. But you can't destroy me over this. You can't take Jace away completely. He needs his mother. He needs a mother who won't hurt him. Helen stepped closer. Her mascara, the little bit she was wearing, ran in black streaks down her cheeks. Please, I'm begging you. I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy, I'll take parenting classes, I'll whatever you want. Just don't take him from me. David looked at her. This woman he'd married 10 years ago. This woman he'd loved, or thought he loved, until he realized love shouldn't feel like walking on broken glass. You didn't just hurt Jace, he said quietly. You hurt all of us. Me, your family, everyone who trusted you. And now you're finally feeling what that's like. What it's like to be the one who's shirt. To be the one everyone looks at with suspicion. To be the one nobody believes. So this is revenge? That's what this is about. No. David shook his head. This is about consequences. Something you never had to deal with before, because your mother always fixed everything for you. Well, she can't fix this. And neither can you. Helen stared at him. For a moment, she looked like she might try to argue more. Then her shoulders sagged. I didn't mean to hurt him, she whispered. Yes, you did. You meant it in that moment. And that's what matters. He walked past her, back to the truck he'd been working on. Helen stood there for another minute, then turned and left. David watched through the bay door as she got in her car, a new sedan, paid for by Virginiano Dowd, and drove away. Miguel came back out. You okay? Yeah. David picked up his wrench. I'm okay. He was better than okay. He was winning, and Helen was finally getting what she deserved. The family court hearing was set for the first week of December. David sat in the courtroom wearing a borrowed suit that Shannon had made him buy. It was a fursuit he'd owned in years, maybe ever, and it felt stiff and uncomfortable. But his lawyer, a sharp woman named Rita Chun, who specialized in custody cases, said appearance mattered. Show the judge you're stable, professional, ready to be a full-time parent. Helen sat across the aisle with her high-priced lawyer, a man in his 60s who looked like he'd never lost a case. She was wearing a modest navy dress, her hair styled but not too styled, just enough makeup to look presentable, playing the role of the grieving mother. Virginia sat behind her, her face an ice sculpture of disapproval. Jace wasn't there. Thank God for that. He was with Shannon, probably playing video games or building something with blocks, blissfully unaware that his entire future was being decided in his wood-paneled room with the broken air conditioning and fluorescent lights. The hearing took 4 hours. Rita presented everything. The medical records from Jace's hospitalization. Dr. Holt's testimony about the suspicious nature of the injuries. The recording of Helen screaming at Jace. The psychological evaluation reports. Statements from Jace's therapist about the trauma it experienced. Text messages showing Helen's threats to cut David off financially. Testimony from neighbors about Helen's behavior. It was damning. Absolutely damning that Helen's lawyer fought hard. He talked about the stress of marriage breakdown. He suggested Jace had been confused by the head injury and was misremembering events. He painted Helen as a devoted mother who'd made one mistake in a moment of weakness, who was already in therapy and working to be better. But then Rita called Helen to the stand. Ms. Maddox, Rita said, her voice calm and measured. Can you walk us through what happened on the evening of September 15th? Helen sat up straight, composed. Jace fell down the stairs. It was an accident. Where were you when he fell? In the kitchen. So you didn't see him fall? No. I heard the noise and rushed out. Rita nodded. That's interesting. Because the medical examiner's report notes that Jace has bruising on his upper arms consistent with being grabbed or pushed. How do you explain that? He must have grabbed onto something when he fell. The railing, perhaps. Maybe. Except the railing doesn't match the bruising pattern. The marks suggest human hands. Adult hands. Rita pulled out a photo. Do these marks look like railing bruises to you? Helen's composure flickered. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. No, but Dr. Holt is. And she testified that these bruises are consistent with force, not a fall. Rita set down the photo. Ms. Maddox, did you push your son down the stairs? No. Did you grab him? I don't remember. It all happened so fast. But you just said you were in the kitchen when he fell. Helen's face flushed. I came out of the kitchen right as it happened. So you were there. Ms. Maddox, your son told multiple people that you pushed him. He told his father. He told Dr. Holt. He told his therapist. Are they all lying? He's confused. Helen's voice rose. He hit his head. He doesn't remember it right. So everyone's confused except you. I'm his mother. I would never hurt him. Rita pulled out another document. This is a recording made by your neighbor, Ms. Torres, on October 23rd. In this recording, you can be heard yelling at Jace. Would you like me to play it for the court? That was taken out of context. Context for telling your 9-year-old that you should never have had him, that he ruined your life. Helen's lawyer objected. The judge sustained it. But the damage was done. Everyone in that courtroom had heard the recording by now. They knew what Helen had said. Rita stepped closer. Ms. Maddox, do you take any responsibility for your son's injuries? It was an accident. That's not what I asked. Helen's hands clenched in her lap. I'm a good mother. I've done everything for that boy. And now everyone's trying to make me look like a monster because my ex-husband wants to punish me for leaving him. You didn't leave him. He blocked your number after you told him to come help with a birthday party while your son was in the ICU. He's twisting everything. Is he twisting the medical evidence? The recordings? The testimony from trained professionals? Helen's mask cracked. Her face went red. Her voice got shrill. Everyone's against me. Meow mother testified against me. My neighbors recorded me. The doctors are biased. Nobody wants to hear my side. So everyone's wrong except you. Yes. Helen stood up, her chair screeching back. Yes, because I'm the only one telling the truth. I didn't push him. He fell. And if people can't see that, it's because Devitt has poisoned them against me. The courtroom went silent. Helen's lawyer grabbed her arm, tried to get her to sit down, but she was past listening. You want to know the truth? Helen's voice was almost a scream now. The truth is I'm tired. I'm tired of being perfect. I'm tired of everyone expecting me to be this amazing mother when nobody helps me. I'm tired of Jace whining and crying and always wanting his father. I'm tired of pretending I don't resent giving up my life for a kid I didn't even want. Virginia stood up in the gallery. Helen, stop. But Helen was on a roll. 10 years of carefully maintained composure exploding in one spectacular meltdown. And you, she whirled on Virginia. You're the worst of all. Nothing I do is ever good enough for you. You criticize how I dress him, how I feed him, how I talk to him. You made Dean feel like a failure every single day. So yes, maybe I yelled at him. Maybe I grabbed him. Maybe I pushed him when I was so angry I couldn't see straight, because nothing in my life is what I wanted, and it's all his fault for existing. The judge banged her gavel. Ms. Maddox, sit down. Helen collapsed back in her chair, her face in her hands. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear. Virginia had gone pale as death. Rita sat down next to Devitt. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The judge called a 15-minute recess. When they came back, her verdict was swift, full custody to Devitt Maddox. Supervised visitation only for Helen Maddox, pending completion of court-mandated therapy and anger management. Helen was also ordered to pay child support and court fees. Devitt felt like he could breathe for the first time in months. Helen left the courtroom without looking at anyone. Virginia tried to follow her, but Helen shook her off. The last Devitt saw of them, they were arguing in the hallway, their voices carrying back through the open doors. The weeks after the trial were quiet. Jace adjusted to living with Devitt full-time. He had his own room now, painted blue the way he'd wanted. He went to therapy twice a week and slowly, bit by bit, started acting like a normal kid again. The nightmares got less frequent. The anxiety about saying the wrong thing eased. He laughed more. Helen didn't show up for her first 2 supervised visits. The third one, she came but left after 20 minutes, claiming Jace was being disrespectful by not wanting to hug her. Devitt stopped expecting anything from her. He focused on Jace, on work, on building a stable life. Shannon came over twice a week for dinner. They played board games. They watched movies. They were a family, just not the one Devitt had imagined 10 years IT was better this way. Helen tried calling sometimes. Devitt never answered. She left voicemails ranging from angrito, pleading to silent crying. He saved them all, just in case, but he never called back. There was nothing left to say. Virginia cut Helen off financially. Devitt heard it through the grapevine. Apparently, Helen had been dipping into her mother's bank accounts without permission, forging signatures, transferring money to cover her legal bills and expensive lifestyle. When Virginia found out, she was furious. She threatened to press charges. Helen begged. Virginia didn't care. In her world, betrayal was unforgivable, even from a daughter. Maybe especially from a daughter. Without her mother's money, Helen couldn't afford the nice apartment. She moved into a one-bedroom in a cheaper complex across town. She lost her gym membership, her salon appointments, all the little luxuries that had made her feel important. Her social circle disappeared. The friends who'd been so supportive during the separation vanished when the truth came out. Nobody wanted to be associated with a woman who'd hurt her own child. Nobody wanted that stain on their reputation. Helen was alone. David didn't feel good about it. He didn't feel bad either. He just felt done. One day in early March, Helen showed up at the auto shop again. David saw her through the window before she came in. She looked worse than before. Thinner. Older. Her clothes didn't fit right. Her hair needed washing. She knocked on the bay door. David wiped his hands and walked over. What do you want? I didn't mean to hurt him. Helen's voice was barely a whisper. I know I've said that before, but I mean it. I didn't plan it. I was just so angry and tired and I snapped. Just for a second. And everything fell apart. David didn't say anything. You were right, Helen continued. About everything. I was selfish. I care more about what people thought than about being a good mother. I let my mom control me. I blamed everyone else for my mistakes. She looked up at him. I'm sorry. For all of it. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed to say it. Okay. Helen laughed, but it was a bitter, broken sound. That's it? Just okay. What do you want me to say? I don't know. That you forgive me? That you understand? David shook his head. I don't forgive you. And I do understand. You wanted a different life. You got stuck in one you didn't like. But that doesn't excuse what you did. Not to Jace. Not Tome. Not to anyone. So I'm just supposed to live with this forever? Everyone hating me? Being alone? You hurt all of us, David said quietly. And now you finally know what that feels like. Helen stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded, just once, and turned to leave. Helen. She stopped. Get help. Real help. Not for Jace or the court or to get your mom back. For you. Because this bath you're on, it doesn't end well. Helen didn't answer. She walked away, her shoulders hunched as rain began to fall. By the time she reached her car, her hair was soaked, her clothes clinging to her thin frame. David watched her standing there in the rain, fumbling with her keys, looking small and defeated. Then he turned and went back to work. 2 months later, Shannon showed up at David's house with her phone in hand and an odd expression on her face. You need to see this. She pulled up a news article. Local woman charged with fraud and forgery. David scanned the text. Helen Maddox had been arrested for forging Virginia Hurst's signature on bank documents and transferring over $40,000 to her own accounts over the past year. Virginia had pressed charges. She was quoted in the article saying she had no choice, that fraud was fraud regardless of family ties, that she couldn't let criminal behavior go unpunished. Helen was facing up to 5 years in prison. David read the article twice. Then he handed the phone back to Shannon. How do you feel? She asked. David thought about it. A year ago, this news would have brought him satisfaction, revenge, vindication, but now he just felt tired. I feel like it's over. You okay with that? Yeah. He looked toward Jace's room, where his son was doing homework at his desk. Yeah, I am. Shannon hugged him. You did good, Dev. You protected your son. That's all that matters. That weekend, David took Jace to the county fair. It was one of those perfect spring days, warm but not hot, with a breeze that smelled like cotton candy and fried food. They rode the Ferris wheel, played carnival games, ate corn dogs until they felt sick. Jace was laughing, really laughing, his face bright with joy. He'd won a stuffed bear at the ring toss, or rather, David had won it for him, and he clutched it like treasure. Dad! Yeah, buddy. Are we okay now? David looked at his son, 9 years old, and already he'd been through more than any kid should have to endure. But he was resilient. He was strong. He was going to be okay. Yeah, David said. We are. They walked through the fairgrounds, just a father and son enjoying a normal day. No lawyers in court hearings. No drama. Just them. David's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, saw a notification from the news app about Helen's arraignment. He stared at it for a second, then deleted it without reading. He didn't need to know. That part of his life was done. Jace tugged on his sleeve. Can we get funnel cake? Sure, buddy. Whatever you want. They walked toward the food stalls, the sounds of the fair wrapping around them like a blanket. Music and laughter and the mechanical whir of rides. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. Helen had gotten exactly what she deserved. And Devitt and Jace, they were finally free.